was Lenny. From the very beginning, he always believed in my playing, and always, you know, he had a certain way about him, a level of excellence that he wanted to do everything the best, and he always spurred me on to go further. And he reminded me recently when we talked. He reminded me. He goes, man, I remember when we used to walk down Fifth Avenue, and you would tell me about this drum book you were going to write. And I don't even remember saying it, but he would go, man, you would say, man, I'm going to write this drum book, and I'm going to do this, and you had it all in your head. And I was like, really? And I would always remind him of when he was young. He would say, man, I'm going to be a rock star. And he would say that. And he goes, I don't remember saying that. I'm like, oh, yeah, definitely. You used to say that, dude. But he had such a diverse interest in music and always spurred me on to go further. And another guy was Al McKay, the guitar player from Earth, Wind & Fire, who I met when I was very young. Two of the members from Earth, Wind & Fire took me under their wing and just believed in me and always encouraged me. One of them was Ralph Johnson, who was the drummer from Earth, Wind & Fire. And he was one of the first guys I met when I moved to LA, and I studied with him. And he encouraged me to go to Berkeley, and he just said, man, you know, you've got it. You have what it takes. You have the gift. Just work it. And then Al McKay, who was the guitar player from Earth, Wind & Fire, he really schooled me and just, you know, just pushed me to another level. And just Paul Jackson Jr., the studio guitar player, when I played with him, James Jamerson Jr., the son of the great Motown bass player. There were so many different players along the way that inspired me, or that, you know, just kind of believed in me and just kind of pushed me further and said, you need to work on this, or you need to do that. So, but I always made myself open and available. You know, guys like Steve Gadd, Harvey Mason, all the guys that were, you know, guys that I grew up listening to, loving, had become mentors somewhat. You know, they would come to my concerts. You know, Steve Gadd came to see me with the New Edition in 1985, and Harvey Mason came to see me with Lenny, and all the drummers that I loved and thought were outstanding, and guys like Bernard Purdy. Eventually we would do gigs and clinics and concerts together, which was amazing, because these were all the guys I grew up listening to. All of those people, everything that I've done in my life has been the result of different people who've sown into me, whether it be for 5 minutes or 5 years, and just picking up all those nuggets of truth from all those guys. And I think one of the things that's helped me, that continues to help me, is I've always been a humble guy. I've always been teachable. I've always been pliable and malleable and, you know, like clay. So if somebody said, hey, you know, if you just did this little thing to your book, it could be better. Or if you just worked on this with your speaking, or if you just did this in your swing playing, or whatever, and I would just be like, oh, okay. You know, I never had any presumption that, like, I know more than you, or I'm famous, so you can't tell me anything. It was just like, oh, great, yeah, I never saw it like that, or I never heard it like that. You know, so I never presumed to, like, arrive anywhere. So, and I've hung with some of the world's greatest musicians, and one thing I learned from all those guys, even Frankie Valli was another, like, mentor who always said, he called me Zorelli. I was the Italian Zoro. Zorelli, you got a lot on the ball, kid. All you got to do is this, and keep with that, and your book's going to be great. You know, just like he would see me working on things, and then he would encourage me. And he'd say, man, you're building a career. You've got so many things going on. And so all those people played a different role, but I allowed myself to be like a sponge, and I allowed myself to learn from these guys who had either been doing it longer, or learn from guys that were younger who just had a different perspective. Even in recording sessions, I'd record with people, and somebody might have a suggestion. Well, I didn't get bent out of shape, you know, just because I've been doing this for 25 years. I didn't say, well, why are you telling me I'm the drummer? Because I learned that good ideas, that no one has a patent on good ideas. If I play something great on a record, I get the credit, but nobody knows that it might have been the bass player who said, why don't you try not putting the bass drum there and putting it there? And I would listen to the idea and go, oh, I didn't think, because I don't hear it that way. And I'd try it and go, wow, now it's locking. So in the end, I'm the hero, but I learned it from all the other people. First of all, when I see the 10th anniversary edition, which we worked on a lot, we revamped it, updated it with new historical photos, new entries, updated information. We just redid the whole thing. Added album cover art everywhere where I wasn't able to originally. So it was so much joy getting back into the creative process of the book just for the 10th anniversary edition that it reminded me of how much fun it was. But when I look at the book, I can't believe I did it. I look at it and I go, this is a monster. This is a masterpiece. How on God's earth did I do this? And I realized that I'm looking back at a time, it was before I had children. I had so much more time that I could work on something that took that many years of work, whereas now my time is so limited, you know, when you're a father and things in your life change, and I just thank God that I had the time to pour my heart into something like that. But when I look at it, I go, man, I just love that whole idea of when I used to sit and listen to hundreds of CDs just to transcribe one groove. What's the best groove for that feel? My goal was to write the best book ever written on that subject. And then, much to my amazement, everywhere all over the world, it thrilled my heart. It wasn't about like how much it sold, but everywhere all over the world it was voted the best educational drum book. It won awards and readers' polls. And it was like the goal was achieved, that I was able to impart this information of which I loved about the history of that music that had never been put together in that way. And it literally has touched drummers around the world. I mean, I'll get emails from Zimbabwe, from Iceland, from Serbia. Man, I got your book. It changed my life. I mean, thousands over the 10 years. The book changed my life. Plus, I was able to bring to the attention of the whole world a lot of the great drummers in that book that people didn't know. And many of them had since passed, so they were able to see themselves in the book, and it was the only book anyone ever mentioned them. And these are guys that played on great records. So it was a great joy to be like a catalyst and to facilitate a dream of which is to bring notoriety to all these other great drummers. The book wasn't about me, it was about all these great drummers that I admired, and it brought them to notoriety, which many of them, it brought them out of the woodworks and helped them get like an educator career and a clinician career and back on the map. Not that it was all me, but I played a small role in bringing attention to this great art form of drumming, which few people had ever written about. Everyone always wrote about the jazz drummers and the rock drummers. And I love all those guys too, but there's a million books you can find about all of those genres. But nobody ever wrote about the classic R&B drummer. And everybody got their beats and grooves from them. The 10th anniversary edition, I can't believe 10 years have gone by. And I marvel at the fact that when I started the book, I didn't even know how to type or use a computer. I started that book and I was pre-computer era. I was not in the modern world. I thought, well, what can you do with a computer? Well, what would I do with one? I mean, now I live by one, but I learned to type because my desire to write that book was so great that I decided to overcome my fear of typing in the computers. And I had a fear of both of them. I'm frustrated, I don't know how to do this. I said, no, this book's not going to come together unless I learn that. So the moral of that story is, don't let what you can't do stop you from doing what you can. Sometimes it'll always be required of you that there may be one thing, you might be super gifted at something, but there's one thing holding that gift back from flourishing. And it may be a skill that you're not good at. But if you learn that one thing, it'll make the other thing sail. And that's what happened with the book. And then it opened up the way for me to do the whole 3-hour DVD on it, where I was able to do soul, funk, and those won awards all over the world. And then eventually that led to me playing at the Modern Drummer Festival. So those are the kinds of things I got to do in those couple-year period, you know, after Lenny was, you know, the Modern Drummer Festival stuff and the more drum corps stuff and working on the 10th anniversary and spending time with my family and playing on more Christian projects. And it's all been a fantastic, amazing, like, you know, 30-year journey.